I'm on the record for speaking several times on my complete derision of any process of forced conversion to or from any religious doctrine. I understand there are those that believe, for whatever reason, that compelling or forcing, or even in absentia, baptizing somebody or converting them between one religion or another without their actual knowing consent is actually a sin. It's a sin upon the person as well as the community that imposes themselves. I believe it is completely repugnant to God to force or compel others to convert. If you're a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, the understanding is that the covenant with God that substantiated the lineages of the Abrahamic faiths was one that God called his chosen people, but he needed a conscious demonstration of their willingness to follow and obey the law. Forced conversion is completely antithetical. Different stages regarding proselytization or some form of evangelism, or even a period of time where one is outside of the culture or a context of learning the liturgy or being able to worship with people, whether you're in exile, whether you're under occupation. This is all part of history, and the character of the people is determined by how they address this. I cannot, in my experience, or even in what has been revealed to me, in any way, shape, or form, find a justification for a forced or compelled conversion from one faith tradition to another. And on the contrary, well, there is prayer and reflection and the internal faith that allows one to express themselves and engage in the world in a way that's authentic as an expression of their godliness or their relationship with godliness. If you cannot engage and confirm with that whom you are seeking to welcome in, or even to try to put in a position of having to acknowledge your authority as a godly person, whether you're offering conversion or providing the means by which one can participate in the ceremony, in the culture, in the adherence. If you cannot, without torture or torment or defiling yourself in your own alleged expression of godliness, get their conscious assent to this process, you have committed a sin. You can't force convert somebody and say you're doing something godly. There are other motives for this, and you have to be honest about this. Perhaps you believe you're a godly person. Perhaps you believe God's given you a calling. And perhaps in order to do that, you have to, every once in a while, do as God did and subject somebody else to the test of Job. You listen to Satan. You listen to lesser spirits. And you decide, you take it upon yourself that you're going to broker something with Satan in order to prove something to Satan. You're not proving anything to God. God already knows who you are. And see, if God allows you to do this for a period of time, God has reasons for such a thing. But if you decide to engage it yourself, and if you decide to do it, that's on you. That's not about God. And that's really all I have to say about this. If you're someone that understands in your soul and in your own personal history or legacy that you've been subjected to a pain or a trauma, it came in the course of someone attempting to force or compel you to convert. This is a reality that many people who are alive at this time have to deal with, either in this life or as part of the accumulated legacies that we live with now in this life. It comes from our ancestors, it comes from our souls. And this is part of the work we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be able to be authentic, and we're supposed to be mature enough to be able to address it at the level it actually is, rather than trying to engage in some sort of lesser process to debase and degrade the actual spiritual capacities people have right now. For what? You can't overcome your own inadequacies? You have to use force and coercion, deviousness, secret tricks, convert people after they're dead in order to claim their decedents. Say you've got some victory over their soul because you were able to make some incantation. Take something that you believe is an expression of a mortal sin they committed and then bring it in as a victim so that then you can what? Do some ceremony while they're absent in order to try to cast a spell over them so that then you can interfere with their authentic relationship with God as a way to defile your own relationship with God. Try to torment them, subject them to desecration, isolate them, show them only perverted reflections. This is yours. This is you. This is your heresy. And it's no more my place to judge you as a heretic in that regard than it is your place to try to cast aspersions on me for refusing to be a heretic with you. So that's all I really have to say about that. If we're talking about the law of man, and we're talking about a need for order in civil society, and a need for assuring that people understand what's appropriate, and that they can comport themselves accordingly, this is one thing. If we need to talk about how to make places safe so that people can authentically engage in their praxis, this is another thing. Even if we have to talk about the haunting of holy sites that were colonized as part of battle, well, then you're going to have to be honest with your relationship and your faith when it comes to warriorhood, when it comes to battle, when it comes to your understanding of conquest. And the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get right with your understanding of how you treat those you conquer. There's nothing godly about trying to force somebody to convert from their faith tradition, even if you conquer their people in a battle. There really isn't. There's something else you're doing. And if you're going to do that, or you're going to try to do that, you need to be able to articulate that outside of a condescension that blames God for your failings. That's all I have to say on this. Again, if you're somebody that has to experience this for yourself, I support you 100%. If it needs to be private between you and God, that's fine. That's your choice. That's your decision. That's between you and God. If you need to be able to talk or express this publicly, and you need support in that regard, this is all I can offer. I make no justification for anybody from any religious background thinking they're entitled to compel somebody else to adhere to their view of how you demonstrate loyalty to their version of God. I can't. It's not acceptable. And if they won't engage in some sort of discourse, and they won't actually engage as that which they're hoping to have requited unto them, this is not godliness. I have plenty experience in how to deal with the ungodliness of this world. But don't try to fake it. Don't try to pretend like it's about anything other than that. I hope this is an answer. On the other hand, if you're trying to do this thing where what you're doing is you're working on some financial portfolio and you're trying to make some decisions about how you're going to reconfigure your previously Libra-rated index references, I have no time for this when you try to mire it in some sort of religious psychobabble. It's completely inappropriate. It was never acceptable. I don't really care how long they've been doing it, right? This is part of the history that you have when you see yourself outside of your own mortality. So please don't make the mistake of trying to put these together. If we're talking about religious persecution and rituals of religious defamation as a way to try to create paradigms around which people in performance of secular society, or at least what they want for people in secular society to acknowledge as their standard for participation, then talk about it like that. Don't try to compel some sort of expression or engagement in a faith praxis so you can adjust your rates.